Hello everybody, I'm Nick again. In this video I'm going to show you how you can get started with server-side Blazor authentication quickly and easily. Keep in mind this video is just about server-side, client-side is a whole different story on its own, and we're going to be covering that in a future video. Also, this video is not about customizing and authorization, it's just about authentication and the minimum amount of code required for you to get started with it. This video is part of my Blazor series, so if you don't want to miss any episodes, please subscribe and ring the sub notification bell. I'm going to be using Framework Core and the built-in ASP.NET Core identity, and that's what's great about server-side, because it's really just an ASP.NET Core application. We can use all that in our code straight away without doing any fancy things. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to add 4 packages, and I'm going to do that straight in the CS proj. Down here I'm going to create a new item group. You can use any NuGet client you want. I just want to be fast with it. So the 4 packages we need is, the first one is the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity Entity Framework Core package. This will add the Identity Entity Framework logic. Then we need the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity UI, and this will add some pages we're going to use. You don't need to know much about that, just know that this package contains them and we're going to use them for this default implementation. If you need to customize it, you'll have to make your own. Then I'm going to add the Microsoft Entity Framework SQLite package, and we're going to use SQLite for this specific example just because it's fast and easy to use. And the last thing we need is the Entity Framework Core.tool package. So these 4 packages are now in. So let's just dive straight into the first thing you do in Entity Framework, and that is create the DB context. I'm going to name mine app DB context, and this will need to implement the identity DB context, and we're just gonna make a public constructor here. So public app DB context options app DB context, and then just name this options. We don't need to specify any custom type. We're gonna use the default identity user type. So base here is just options and empty constructor, and that's it with the DB context. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to go to the startup.cs, and I need to do some setup here. So the first thing, we go to the configure services method, and we're saying services.add DB context app DB context, and then options, and in here we say options, we just put in a new line so you can see it better, use SQLite, and we're gonna use the data source equals app.db, and when we update our database, this will automatically create an app.db file for us, and this will be the database. And then we need to say services.add default identity, and then we're going to use the identity user default class for our identity, and we also need to say add entity framework stores app DB context. And the last thing we need to add is we're going to say services.add scoped, and this is the most important thing for Blazor authentication, and that is the authentication state provider. And if we take a look into this class, it's an abstract class and you need to provide an implementation for it, but this provides all the information for the authentication state of the current user, and Blazor will use that in its components to say, okay, if you're authorized, see this. If you're not authorized, you can see this. If you're being authorized currently, you can see this. We won't customize it at all. We're going to provide something called the server authentication state, which is built in, and we're just going to leave it there in this video. In a future video, I'm going to show you how you can actually provide a custom authentication state provider to do more interesting things in your components. But for now, let's just keep it simple and to the point. Now we need to go to the configure method in the same startup.cs. And we need to find the use routing, and we're gonna say app.use authentication and app.use authorization. And in the use endpoints, I need to say endpoints.map controllers, and this will automatically map all the controllers contained in the identity UI package we have added. So this is it when it comes to a startup and a DB context. That's all done. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go to the app.razor and we need to change this, because now our components, we want them to know our current authentication state. The way we can do that is very simple. The first thing is you need to find this root view and you need to change this to an authorized root view, and this is enough for any component after that to inherit that cascading authentication state. It's not quite as simple in the layout view in the not found section. In here we need to say cascading authentication state, and we need to close that here, and then we just put that layout view component in here. So now our cascading authentication state contains this layout view, which means that any state will be passed down to that. And that's it for setup. Now let's use a component that will actually use that authentication state. We're gonna go in the shared folder, and I'm gonna say, actually I'm not gonna say new, I'm gonna just pick up a random component and paste it and then rename it. That's faster. And I'm gonna call that login display. And let's just delete anything in here. And what this will represent is either a hello and name and then a logout button, or a register or login button. So we're gonna get the current authentication state, and based on that we're gonna say, do you want to log in register or do you want to manage your account or log out? The first thing I need on the top is an authorized view component, and all this will do is it will tell the system that anything contained in here will use the authentication state to show something based on that. So if you are authorized, and for that we're gonna use the authorized component, then we're gonna put some code here. If you are not authorized, then you're gonna see something else. So if you are authorized, we're gonna show you a button or a link, and this href will be identity account manage. And if you're wondering where this is coming from, it's coming from the UI package. And I'm gonna say hello, at contact.user.identity.name. The reason why you can't see context here is because Rider isn't updated to accept it as a parameter, but it actually is there. It's a top level variable in this authorized view and in this component. And then we're gonna provide a form, and this form will contain a button, and this will be the logout button. So when you method equals post this form, and let's give it an action, identity account log out, then this button is the log out button, and the type is submit. We can also style it with Bootstrap just to make sure it looks good. So it's a nav link, button link. Here we go. So if you're authorized, hello and your name, and then a logout button. If you're not authorized, then it's gonna be just two links, a login and a register. So the first button will be the register button, and it's under identity account register, and the other one is under account login, and we're gonna name that login as well. And now we have this component. I'm going to go to the main layout.razor, and I'm gonna add it right on top of this about button. So login display goes here. So if I now run this, I just want to show you in the front end what you will see at this point. Here we go. As you can see, we have the register and the login button. Now, if we click them, the application will fail, and that's because the UI, the identity UI, requires a partial view, which we will create now. But yeah, if you can see, if I click that, it will say it requires the login partial. This is something from the MVC territory, and this actually shows you how you can mix MVC with Blazor as well. But I don't want to stand too much on that because it's not the focus of this video. What you need to know is that we need to create a view and a partial view, and we're going to do that now. the first thing I want to create is a folder actually. And this needs to be this specific structure. So we need areas. And in these areas, we're going to create an identity folder. It's the identity area. And in this identity folder, we're going to create a new one called pages. And in here, I'm going to create another one called shared. And then in this shared folder, I'm going to create a partial view. And this is the partial view I'm required to have for the system to work. Razor MVC partial view. I'm going to name it _login partial. And I'm going to delete everything here. And I need a few things. I need to inject a couple of services. The first is the sign in manager that I can now use. And for that to be injected, I need to import it as well. So identity user, and I'm going to name it sign in manager. And then I also need the user manager. And I also need to add all the tag helpers in microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC.tag-helpers, and we require them for some buttons to work. So I need an unordered list here, and I'm gonna give it a class as well, just to make it look consistent. So nav bar -nav, that goes here, and now we need a bit of logic here. So I'm gonna say if sign in manager dot is signed in user, so if our user is signed in, then I'm gonna show them the hello and name and the logout button. Else I'm gonna show them the register and the login button. So first thing goes here, list, again give it a class to make it look consistent, nav item, and it's a link class equals nav link, and also text dark. And then ASP area needs to be identity, and then ASP page needs to be account manage index. And in here we need to say hello user dot identity dot name exclamation mark, and we also need another one of these for the logout here. So change this to logout, and the page is not manage index, is account logout, and this actually doesn't exist. We are going to create this page, and now I'll copy this once. I'm going to paste it here twice, and the first one will be register, and the second one will be login. I'm going to name this login, and I'm going to name this register. So here we go. Now we have this partial view, which is 100% required, but what we don't have is this logout page, this logout button. So for that reason, I'm going to create that as well before I run it. Now in identity pages, I need to create a new folder. So a new directory, and I'm going to name this account, which is, as you can see, what we need here in the logout. And in this, I'm going to create a new MVC view called log out. Now I don't need any of that in here. What I do need is I need to say that this is a page. I also need to add an attribute on this page, and this is the ignore anti-forgery token, and this just tells the page to ignore the anti-forgery token on any action. I won't be diving too much into this. You don't really need to know about that for Blazor authentication, but just know it's there. And then I'm going to inject the sign in manager, identity user, sign in manager, and that's all I need here. And there's actually no razor I need to have in here. I'm going to create a functions block, and I'm going to only make a single method, and that is the method that needs to deal with the post, which is the logout post that the user will send. So I'm going to use the onPost method, And this is something specific to Razor pages. Again, I'm not going to be diving too much into that because it's not the subject of this video. But I'm going to be using that to say, if you're signed in, then await sign in manager, sign out async. And then I'm going to redirect you to the beginning. There's only one last thing I need to do before I'm able to run this, and this is to run the migrations for Entity Framework. So before you can run any command Entity Framework, you need the .NET EF CLI tool, and you can install that by using .NET tool install global .NET EF, and then the version. We're on 3.0, so we're going to stick with that. If I click that, it's going to say that, yeah, it's already installed in my PC, but if you don't have it, you need to run this command. So I'm going to clear that, and now I can say .NET EF migrations add, and I'm going to call the migration init, like initialize. So this will create all the database migrations required. That's now done. And then I need to do .NET EF database update, and this will actually run the migrations and create the database object. Again, all that successfully run. I should now have a migrations folder, and I should have the app.db. So let's run the application finally and see what we've done. So our application is up and running. You can see register and login, and you can see these two, login and register. It's all here, all coming from that UI package, except for this component, which is what we added in this partial view. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new account here. So test@nick.com. And now I'm logged in. As you can see, I can go to hello, and this says, sorry, there's nothing at this page. And this fails because I think I've used account manager instead of account manage. So let's quickly patch this out. Yeah, I did that. Sorry for that. If I go back to the page now, so back at the hello manage account, you can see I can add my phone number if I want to and save that. Well, this needs to be a valid phone number. Okay, so numbers. So yeah, this worked. If I refresh that, I can see that here. Change password, email, two-factor authentication, all that's coming out of the box. And I can just log out, and as you can see, I'm now logged out again. This is cool and all, but what happens if I wanna only log a page down to somebody who's actually authenticated? Well, let's go to the pages folder, and I'm gonna do that for the showcase.razor component. And all I need to do is say attribute, and I'm gonna add the authorized attribute, and I'm gonna run this. So here, as you can see, I can access the counter, I can access the fetch data, but when I go to the showcase, not authorized. But if I do log in, then I can actually access the showcase page. So easily as that. Now that's cool, but what happens if I want to show something different when you're not authorized in this specific page? Well, I can actually remove this attribute altogether, and I'm gonna refer a few components. And this is the authorized view, and this component has a few others in it. So the first one is the authorized, and the not authorized. And in here is where I put the stuff I want to put. If you are authorized, and this is when you're not authorized. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it here. And then if you're not authorized, sorry, you cannot see this. I'm sorry, not authorized, not authorized. Sorry for that. So let's run this. So as you can see, I can go here and home, and then I can click showcase. Sorry, you cannot see this. But if I do log in, and I go here, I can actually see it now. So it's one or the other. However, let's go ahead and go in the fetch data one. And in here, I add the attribute approach where I just say attribute authorized. What if I want to have just a general non-authorized message for any page that doesn't have any specific not authorized component? I can do that by customizing the app.razor here. So currently we have this authorized root view, but this can actually have nested components in here. And we're going to use the not authorized component here, because we can actually use it here as well. And we can also use the authorizing component, which is used when you're doing asynchronous authorization and the content is changing as you're being authorized. So in this scenario, I'm just going to say h1, sorry, p, you cannot see this by. And if you're being authorized currently, just a sec, you are being authorized. And you can use these two components on any authorized view as well. So let's run this and see what happens when we access the fetchdata.razor page. So if we go to the showcase, sorry, you cannot see this. This is coming from the not authorized in the specific page. But if I go to fetch data, sorry, you cannot see this by, and this is coming from the app.razor. And if I log in, I have access to both of these. So both showcase and fetch data. Log out, not so much. The last thing that I want to show you is how you can actually get this authentication state into your component and use that. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a code block here. And in that code block, I'm going to create a private task of type authentication state. And then I'm going to name this auth state task. And a getter and a setter here. And this is a cascading parameter, which means that this cascading parameter will be cascaded by, if we go in the app.razor, by this authorized root view and its subcomponents and the cascading authentication state here. And if I go back to where I was, in here I can now actually say override, and let's use the on after render async method. And I'm gonna say if it is first render, then I can get the auth state by awaiting the auth state task that I just injected as a parameter. And I need to change this to an async method, but that's fine. And now I can actually get the user by doing auth state dot user. And I can do all sorts of things because the user object contains the claims, the identities, or the identity if there's only one here. So I can get things like my name, authentication type, or is authenticated. Let me just quickly show you an example of that. I'm going to say var equals username equals that, and I'm going to get the username like this. And then I'm going to go in the JS interop, and I'm going to copy this line here, invoke void async. And this will be called the set element text by ID. So we're going to set the text of an element to the username using JS here. So I'm going to paste that, and I'm going to go up here and inject JS runtime. Here we go. And the span ID will be called username. And I'm going to create it within the authorized component under this alert. So I'm going to say span ID equals username. Here we go. And then the value that I'm going to set here is my name is, and then the username, not user, username. So if I now run this, as you can see, I'm not logged in, but if I do log in and I go here, and now I go to the showcase, I can see my name is nick@test.com, and the name is defaulted to the email in this specific implementation. And this is coming from the auth state that I'm using through the cascading parameter. And you can use that for any sort of things. This is all I had for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Special thanks to my GitHub sponsors for making these videos possible. If you want to help me as well, you can find the link down below. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe for more content like this, and ring the bell as well, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep coding.